Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be evaluating functions using all of our previous knowledge from what we've learned throughout this chapter. Okay, we're going to use reference angles. We're going to use trig setups. We're going to use the unit circle. And very important, which we need to know, we're going to be using our special right triangles, ladies and gentlemen. You have to know those. We're going to be using them a lot right now. Okay? We have nothing new. We're going to do 4 examples and we are done. So make sure your notes are out so you can get these 4 examples in them. Here we go. So our first example says we have to find the exact value of the trig function and we have to show all of our work. So we are going to find cosine of negative 225. First thing we have to do, draw our x and y axis. Next thing we have to do, draw our angle. So we're starting with our initial side. We're going negative 225, so this would be 90. This is going to be 180. This is going to be 270. So we're going to go all the way around to about here, we'll say. There is our negative 270 degrees. Next thing we have to do, set up our reference triangle. A reference triangle, we're going to go from our terminal side to our x-axis, and we're going to create that perpendicular right angle right there. After we find our reference triangle, we have to find our reference angle. So here's our angle. We're closest to 180, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 270 minus 180. When I do that, I get 45 degrees. So here goes my 45 degree angle. This angle will also be 45 degrees. Now this is very important when we know our special right triangles, what we're going to fill in next. If we think about always being across from the 45 is going to be 1. So across from here is going to be 1. Since it's in the positive, y-axis is going to be a positive 1. Now from here to here, we're also across from the 45 degree angle, but we're going left on our coordinate plane, so it's going to be a negative 1. Now, if we know the legs of our right triangle of 45, 45, 90, the hypotenuse is always the leg times the square root of 2. So this is just going to be the square root of 2 right there. So now that we have our triangle all put together, we have to go along and say this is going to be the opposite, this is the adjacent, and this is the hypotenuse. So now we're no longer looking for the cosine of negative 225. We change that angle to 45. So we're looking for the cosine of 45 degrees, which equals, if we're talking about cosine, is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent to my angle is negative 1, and my hypotenuse is the square root of 2. We know we can't add the square root of 2. To get rid of that, multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. I have negative square root of 2 all over 2. That is my final answer. That is exact. You have to leave it as square roots. I do not want decimals. Moving on to example number 2. This one we have to find the secant of 300. So set up our coordinate plane, create our angle. So our initial side is here. We're going to go all the way to 300. So we have 90, 180, 270. So our 300 is going to be about right here. Draw our angle in. This is 300 degrees. From here, we're going to create our reference angle. So using our terminal side and our x-axis, we're going to create our reference angle, going straight up, creating that right angle. Our reference angle is done. Now it's time to move on to our reference angle. Reference angle, always here, always touching the origin. For this one, I'm getting really close to 360, so I'm going to take 360 minus 300. and I'm left with 60. So this reference angle is 60 degrees. That means this angle over here is 30 degrees. We have our special right triangle. We remember our short side of our special right triangle is the most important. So since that's our most important, the one we have to know, we're going to start that at 1. So always across from my 30-degree angle is going to be 1. And since I'm going to the right of my origin, it's going to be a positive 1. Now to find my long leg, all I have to do is take my short leg times the square root of 3. But since I'm going down, I'm in a negative quadrant, it's going to be negative square root of 3. And last but not least, I have to find my hypotenuse. I take my short leg times 2, so my hypotenuse is 2. So for all 30, 60, 90 triangles, I'm going to have 1, the square root of 3, and 2. My 1 and square root of 3 might be positive or negative, but my hypotenuse is always going to be positive. Now once we figure all this out, label our sides. This is the opposite, this is the adjacent, this is our hypotenuse. So now we're looking for the secant of 60 degrees. Now, secant is the opposite of cosine, so I have to think about this as hypotenuse over adjacent. So my hypotenuse is 2, and my adjacent is 1. So to simplify this, I just have 2. Off to example number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is. We have the cotangent of negative 8 pi over 3. If you look on your unit circle chart, you're going to find that negative 8 pi over 3 is not on there. So we have to go through and convert this. So I have x over 360 equals negative 8 pi all over 3. Oh, excuse me, all over 2 pi. Cross multiply, I'm going to get 2 pi x equals negative 960 pi. Now to solve this, divide both sides by 2 pi. And x equals negative 480 degrees. So now I'm no longer looking for the cotangent of negative 8 pi over 3. I'm looking for the cotangent of negative 480 degrees. To do this, same as we started the other two, we have to create our x and y axes followed by our reference angle. Now this reference angle, ladies and gentlemen, is larger than 360. So we still start at our initial side. And we're going to go 360. So I'm going to take 480 and I'm going to take out 360 of it. If I take that out, I'm left with 120 degrees. So I'm going to go around one whole circle. And now I have to go 120 degrees. So this is 90, 180. I'm only going to go to about here. So I'm going to go all the way around to here. This is negative 480 degrees. Once I've created my angle, I need to create my reference triangle using my terminal side and my x-axis. Once I have my terminal side made, I'm going to go straight up to my x-axis, create that right angle. There's my reference triangle. Now I need to find my reference angle. Has to be at the origin, looking for this angle right here. I'm getting really close to 180, and I'm going to use this 120 figure. So, because I went 120 extra after I did my full circle. So if I do 180 minus 120, I am exactly 60 degrees away. So here I'll have 60 degrees, here I'll have 30 degrees. So I'm working with my special 30, 60, 90. Now across from 30 is always going to be 1. Now since I'm going to the left, it's going to be a negative 1. And since I'm going down to find my long leg, I take it times the square root of 3, so it's going to be a negative square root of 3. And my hypotenuse is always going to be 2. So I'm going to label each one of these for my reference angle. This is the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. This is the adjacent. Now, to solve this, plug it back up in here, and now I'm finding the cotangent of 60 degrees, because that's our reference angle. Cotangent is the opposite of tangent, so I'm going to do adjacent over opposite. Adjacent is -1. My opposite is negative square roots of 3. Now I can't have the square root of 3. My negatives will cancel though, so I have to multiply by the square root of 3, multiply by the square root of 3. I get the square root of 3 all over 3. That is my final answer for this one. Have to leave it in terms of square roots. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, last example for the day. Once again, we're given a tangent, and we need to find the exact value of this trig function, and it's -3 pi over 4. Now that's not in our unit circle, so we're going to have to solve for that. So we have x over 360 equals -3 pi all over 4 all over 2 pi. Cross multiply here. We get 2 pi x equals -270 pi. Divide both sides by 2 pi. And my x value equals -135 degrees. So I'm now looking for the tangent of -135 degrees. Now we start from the beginning. Draw your x and y coordinates. Once that is done, you need to draw your angle. Start with our initial side. It's negative, so we're going to go clockwise. 90, 180. In between here, we're going to go -135 degrees. Once my angle's in place, do that reference triangle. Use the terminal side and the x-axis. Bring it straight up to that x-axis. Create my right angle. That's done. Moving on to the next step. We have to find the reference angle. So we have to be at the origin. Here's my reference angle. To find it, I'm getting close to 180, so I'll take 180 minus 135, and I'm going to get 45 degrees. So here's a 45-degree angle, and here's a 45-degree angle. Always across from my 45-degree angle, I'm going to have 1. But in this case, since I'm going left of the origin, it's going to be a -1. And since I'm going down, it's also going to be a -1. My hypotenuse is always going to be the square root of 2. Now that I have all of this, I'm going to go around and label my sides. This is the opposite, this is the adjacent, and this is the hypotenuse. Since I'm looking for tangent of our new, which is 45-degree angle, equals opposite over adjacent. My opposite is -1. My adjacent is -1. -1 divided by -1 is 1. And that is our final answer, ladies and gentlemen, and the end of our wonderful video. I hope you guys have a fabulous day, and I'll be seeing you later. Bye. Bye.